Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're watching Newcastle Fast FM. This is The Late Show with your host, Abu Tayyib, and we are live every night throughout the month of Ramadan from midnight up until about 1 o'clock in the morning. The Late Show, we have a special guest or guests every single evening, inshallah, to discuss different topics, to discuss different things, and to promote the good work that some of these guests are doing in their communities. So before we start, as always, I normally do a little reminder about Ramadan, usually something that we can all benefit from before I introduce you to my guests, inshallah. So tonight's little reminder is going to be, everybody's heard this narration. The beginning of Ramadan is mercy, its middle is forgiveness, and its end is freedom from fire. We hear this every single year, the same narration. Unfortunately, though, this narration is not only not authentic, but it is actually munkar. Allah classifies this narration as rejected, not even weak. So therefore, this statement is not something that we can go by when it comes to Ramadan. We have to remind ourselves that Ramadan in this blessed month is the month of mercy. As we know, there are authentic narrations on that. We know that is the month to do which the Quran was revealed, and we know it's the month to do good deeds, continue to do good deeds, and try and get as many rewards as possible. So little clarification on there is our little reminder for tonight, inshallah. So let me move on to the subject at hand. Let me introduce our guests for this evening. We have in the studio the two German Dawah kebabs. You heard of German doner kebab, right?
Kebab.
We've got the German Dawah kebabs here. So we've got two brothers who are pioneering in the Dawah scene in the German-speaking countries. We have Brother Amir from Iman, who is based in Vienna, who is talking, who is part of the organization Iman, which deals with, and we're going to find out exactly what Iman is all about, but it is a Dawah organization for the German-speaking countries. And we also have Brother Sertaj, who is also part of Iman, but he is also the outreach specialist for IERA, Central Europe. So he is very active in Dawah and calling people to Islam in the German language also. So let's start off with Amir. Amir, tell us a little bit about yourself, or I also call you Arnie, right? You know, we have
Arnie, I remember.
Arnie, and the Führer in the audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have, and I'll tell you something. Yeah, before we start introducing you guys, I remember my journey to Vienna. I came there some time ago, more than a year and a half ago, I think it was. And I remember the hospitality was amazing. The brothers were good. I was very, very impressed by the Dawah organization, Iman, and the work that they're doing. Very interesting place as well, Vienna. It's famous for a few things, isn't it, guys?
Yeah.
And a few types of people, yeah? Arnold Schwarzenegger, am I right? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Mozart,
And
Amadeus as well. But
Mozart,
when you want to,
Amadeus,
when you want to, yeah, when it comes to Vienna, brother Amir can tell you more about it because he was born and raised there, basically.
Yeah, and there's another interesting character that came from there, isn't there? That you guys want to sort of hide in your history.
Actually, he's not Vienna. Yeah, you're right. Many people are from Vienna.
Okay, so from Austria. Adolf Hitler, my friends. He was from Austria as well, right? Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting things that have come out of Austria. But, you know, even in history, within Islamic history, Austria plays a part in that, right? Austria makes an appearance in our history, in our Islamic history, through the Ottoman Empire, through other Muslim interactions Am I right?
Yes, you can say so.
Okay.
No, great. You want to you want to hear about the Austrian history?
We could touch upon it. I mean, tell us a little bit about the Islamic interactions between that. There has been interactions. We discussed it with Dr. Steph Keris last week. That the Austro-Hungary Empire had something to do with the interactions with the Islamic empires or the Islamic civilizations. So, okay, we can come to that later on, inshallah. Let me introduce Amir. Tell us a little bit about yourself, bro. Your background, who you are, what you were doing, what you're doing now, and then we're going to talk to Sertaj, and then we'll talk about Iman after that, inshallah.
Okay, Barakallahu Feek. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I want to be very grateful and thankful to be hosted to this unique show. It's my first appearance on something like this, and I want to say thank you for hosting Sertaj and me. First of all, my name is Amir. I'm living in Vienna, born and raised here in Austria. I always been a Muslim, and majority of my time I was not active in Dawah. The last 4 to 5 years I participated very intensive, especially in the last 2 years. And our focus in the organization, which you already introduced, which is called Iman, the main focus is to keep the dialogue about Allah and His Deen on a level that gets empathy and really affects the heart of the people. And we focused on the German-speaking countries, like there are 100 million people around about, and we have very intensive dialogues with non-Muslims, Christians, and focus on that. To me, personally, I study PhD in social science. I'm focused on the social aspect: what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what does truth mean, what is absolute truth, what is relative. And I focus on this during my dialogues with non-Muslims, especially with atheists, people who don't believe in anything. And that's my main participation. And then the office is in Vienna, and spent much time there distributing organization and working hand in hand with Sertaj. So that's what I do.
So when I had a conversation with you, you weren't always involved in Dawah or Islamic work. What were you doing before that?
Before I joined the Dawah officially, I participated very intensively in politics. I was actually working in the Labour Party, in the Social Democratic Party of Austria, and I was educated there parallelly to my study. And I always been a very interested person in politics. And after 2016, when the niqab ban has been established by my party, I was not able to handle the situation, knowing that I work for a party which disobeys in a very precise way Allah. So I was in a conflict, and after that I recognized the akhirah is more important than my level in status and so on. And then I met this brother below me and since then I joined fully focused on the Dawah and left politics in 2017, I think.
Excellent. And what would you say is from your experiences in politics and in the Labour Party? Is there can a Muslim be involved in party politics like this, or is there always going to be a conflict, do you think?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Of course, I was reflecting, let's say, 5 years about that question, because as long as you do something which is not allowed, which is something like you do, I don't know, visiting some places which is not allowed, you can always repent, you can always make tawbah, and you can ask Allah for forgiveness. So actually that's not a part which takes your deen or something like that. But sometimes I want to give you a precise example. Sometimes when there is a party day, so a congress of the party, an annual congress, maybe you understand me, every year there's a meeting, and sometimes you have to sing a socialist song which denies Allah. So that's
Subhanallah.
they say something like, no God will help you in this song, and it's so difficult to me. I never sung this song, and it's so difficult to me to remember. Wow, that's really hard. So you always have conflicts, but you must focus on what is more important to you and in your next life. That's very important, because you don't live unlimitedly.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think this is when the niqab ban came in, it was very specifically against Muslims, essentially.
That's absolutely correct.
That must have been really difficult for you to try and maneuver between the two.
You're absolutely right. As the law is precisely excluded Jews. So they exclude the kippah. I think it was the kippah on the head, and the turban. I don't know if the word is correct. The turban for the Indian people of India, for the Sikhs, yes. Especially in the law, this was excluded, and I really had no argument.
That's crazy.
How can I defend this law? It was so difficult to me, subhanAllah.
Yeah, I can imagine. That is very, very difficult. But alhamdulillah, you made your choices. You've got involved in the dawah. It's the best move that you've probably made, I would argue. I think for your dunya and for your akhirah. So may Allah bless you for that and making the sacrifice, really, because it's a career sacrifice, essentially, what you've done.
Yes, I remember. It was a hard time, and I remember Sertac once when we met. We met in the time when I was participating both, and he told me once, get settled. He said, get settled, because the storm will come. It will not be a slow wave in the ocean. It will be a strong storm, and get prepared. And alhamdulillah, I followed his command, so I was prepared, and I absolutely agree to your sentence that it was career changing.
May Allah accept it from you.
Hello, man.
Let me introduce the Führer himself, Sertac.
He makes jokes.
The Führer of the dawah, man. Führer means leader, right? Am I right, Sertac?
Yeah, but it has a very negative connotation in Austria. So
avoid it.
Let's avoid it. Yeah.
Avoid that. Yeah. Okay. I'm talking about linguistically. If you're a linguistically leader of the dawah, because that's essentially what you are, alhamdulillah. So, okay. So let's introduce Sertac. Tell us a little bit about yourself, bro. What's your background? What have you been doing up to where you are now? You from Austria. You're not from Vienna. You're from a different part of Austria.
Yeah, I'm from Upper Austria, which is about 2.5 hours car ride in distance to Vienna. So my name is Sertac. I'm 29 years old. I'm involved in dawah since, let's say, 9 to 10 years now. In 2014, I founded the organization Iman together with Brother Umar, who unfortunately couldn't attend today. And to be honest, we always, in our approach, looked up to AIRA when it comes to our dawah materials, when it came to our approach, right, to conceptualize and design projects. And yeah, step by step, we started this way. And alhamdulillah, currently Iman operates in 3 countries, Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And subhanallah, we gained a lot of experience. Now, as you mentioned, since 15 months, I am now at AIRA as an outreach specialist. So Brother Amir, who is my right hand in Iman, I basically shifted a lot of work to him. And I'm just coordinating the work of Iman, basically. I'm more focusing on AIRA in Central Europe. And yeah, that's my background. Yeah, that's
yeah, brilliant. And I have to say, Amir is doing a fantastic job. I've been watching the some of the programs, especially with Iman TV, the podcast. You've had some brilliant guests on there, and we're going to talk about some of those in a moment as well, inshallah. But before that, let's get the audience to understand something about the German-speaking world. The German-speaking world is not just Germany, as most people might, assume. as you mentioned, the three German-speaking countries, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, they have something in common. And in total, there is approximately 100 million German speakers in the world, right? That's not a small amount of people. That is a huge amount of people, okay? Now, when it comes to the German-speaking world or the German-speaking people, what is the impact of your dawah on the German speakers in terms of, obviously you've got a lot of history there. You've got the First World War, the Second World War. You've got the German impact in across Africa, across Europe, across, there's a lot of history in terms of not only militarily and colonialism and things like that, but the German speakers, they have a lot of I guess pride in their culture as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So tell me, when you're doing your dawah to the German-speaking countries, what is the impact that you find? What are the main arguments that they have? Are they believers in God? Are they Christian? Are they Catholic? What is the situation with them? Because I remember when I was there, you showed me in the office a big map, right, of your area of the world, and you'd split it up into different sections. And he said, we do our dawah in this way over here, and we do a different style of dawah over here. Talk us through that and explain that to those who are watching tonight.
Amir, go on.
As you mentioned, actually Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, the German-speaking countries, they were actually never a colonial power. Austria and Germany and Switzerland, let's say Germany some very little part, they had never territorial gain. They were not so imperial like the Spanish people who invaded or conquered South America, the French and the British and so on in North America. Germany, Austria, and Switzerland had very few contacts with foreigners. And that's the main concept. Seeing something foreign or different is something new to these people. And especially if you recognize that Islam in these three countries is actually something very new. In the last 40 to 50 years, let's say 30 to 50 years, Islam played a small role in these three countries. In the same time, Great Britain, for example, they were colonial power. They had a really strong power and influence by Muslim countries or by region where Muslims live. So you cannot compare Austria and Germany and Switzerland to any other Western European country. You should compare it to Eastern European country like Poland and so on. So in the last decades, the influence of Islam to the people of Austria became really big, and especially after 2015, when the Syrian war or crisis led to many refugee movement towards Austria. In less than 1 year, 1 million Muslims passed Austria to Europe, and very many people stayed here. So the influence of Islam to the people increases. This has advantages, disadvantages, of course. And my personally, recognition, especially from the histories, the more you talk, the better it is. The more you talk, the better it is.
Absolutely. And I think Germany has been quite open and quite how can I put it? Angela Merkel, she's been very pro, opening the borders for refugees and things like that. Maybe she's had a bit of stick for doing that as well. Actually, from what I've noticed, there's been a bit of a backlash against her because she, at the beginning, certainly anyway, she was quite open to allowing Syrian refugees in particular from coming into Germany.
I'm not sure if she had a chance. Yeah, I'm not sure if she had a chance when the movement started to Southern Europe, and 2 million people wanted to go to Europe. I'm not able to say if it was her choice. Maybe it was her decision, so to say. You understand me?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But, you know, it's interesting that you made the comment that, you know, there's the Islamic connection with Germany is fairly recent. But isn't it the case that World War One,
Yeah.
when the Germans, it was the Germans who brought the Turks, the alliance with the Turks,
Yes, with the Ottoman. Yeah.
yeah, with the Ottomans rather, into drag them into the war essentially. And
Yes.
then after the breakdown of the Ottoman Empire, the Khilafah, many Turkish people migrated to Germany.
Okay. They always have been a migration movement, especially in the post Second World War area.
Mm.
So after 45, after after the British and the US and the Russians and the winner of the Second World War left Germany, so West Germany had big or was influenced very strong by the Turkish people. And now I think like in Austria, the majority of Muslims in Germany are Turkish, like Sertac Turkish is. So the Turkish impact is the strongest impact in all three countries. Maybe in Switzerland it's a bit Albanian, but the Turkish, let's say the Albanian are semi-Turkish, so to say, strong influence of that. So the Turkish people had a big influence, and of course, yeah, that's the biggest impact actually.
Yeah, let me bring Sertaj into this. Sertaj, because obviously your ancestors, your roots are Turkish. What's the situation in terms of the Turkish migration, the Islamic involvement, any form of dawah or Islamic influence on these three countries?
Yeah, I mean, from a social perspective, when the first Turks came, obviously their intention was to come to work, basically, right? So from my little experience, what I can say is that their main focus was to work. But of course, besides that, they built a lot of masajid, a lot of mosques here. But when it comes to dawah, it was quite limited. So the Turkish people mainly lived very isolated. They want to be with themselves, and they basically built mosques, and this was basically the meeting center, basically. But this mentality of giving dawah, inviting people, this is a quite recent phenomenon. Let's say it started in the last 10 to 15 years, basically, you know, where there was a new era. It was a rise of this mindset of giving dawah. So from that perspective, I would say that when we come back to your question initially, you mentioned what kind of arguments we are encountered with our non-Muslim brothers and sisters in humanity in these German-speaking countries. So we need to consider that all three countries are mainly impacted by Christianity. I mean, the main background is Christianity. But if we look at Germany, for example, it's very interesting. There is an invisible border, you can say, right? Where we have in the north a lot of atheistic people, and in the south we have a more conservative Christian kind of people. So this invisible border, let's say, is very obvious. I mean, just to give you an example, in Hamburg, which is the northest biggest city in Germany, it's between 60 to 70% of atheists, right? So, of course, when I was in Hamburg, for example, a couple of months ago, my lecture was mainly focused on the history of atheism, arguments for the existence of God, because the brothers and sisters there, they are dealing with these kind of questions. But when it comes to Munich, for example, in the south of Germany, mainly the arguments are around the topic of Christianity. And Austria, especially Austria and Switzerland, are mainly impacted by Christianity. Nevertheless, I would say that the main people are a mixture of deists and Christians. Because people are not reflecting deeply about the religion. Yes, they say I have a Christian background and I have a small affinity to Christianity because their parents are Christians, but mainly they don't engage with the scripture. They don't really engage with theological discussions. So therefore, mainly I would say from a practical perspective, people are more in this category of being deists, which means basically they believe in God, but they don't follow any scripture or revelation from God. This is from my little experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've got some comments here on the on my Facebook page as well. Let's see who's first. We've got Dr. Steph Keris, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers. To Vienna from Dr. Steph Keris. I don't even know how to pronounce that, man. What is that?
What? Let me check.
It's on my thing. But anyway, Viel Grube or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he's giving you guys salams, yeah?
Yeah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Brother Jonas, assalamu alaikum. Ikhwan, looking forward to your discussion and insights about this very important topic. Brother Jonas, legend, mashallah, well done.
Yes.
Looking forward to his
I know him very
contribution
well. Yeah.
tonight. We've got Dr. Steph Keris. Yeah, here's some good points. Islam is older than both Germany and Switzerland as modern state. So Muslims have been there in both countries before the establishment of these countries, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he mentioned that when he was with us last week, he did actually talk about that. Almir, assalamu alaikum from Balkan, from Bosnia. So we have a brother from Bosnia tuned in as well. Have we got any comments on this one? Let's have a look. It is very hard to continue work for Islam in Germany as Muslim. Okay. We've got Sister Yasmin Hijabinator. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum, sister. She's from Austria as well, actually. She's Austrian sister.
Great.
Sahila, assalamu alaikum. Muhsin, yes.
Yes, let's talk about the question with it's so hard for Muslims to work there. Yes, it is very hard to continue work for Islam in Germany as a Muslim. That's actually a very imprecise question. Or let's say it was not a question, it was a statement. Of course, it can be very difficult. But actually, that's the struggle of life, isn't it? You have to adapt to the situation, and of course everybody faces troubles, but let's say from a social perspective, we have to handle this situation. There is no second chance. There is no chance to leave or to, there are non-Muslims in Germany, there are non-Muslims in Britain. The question is how to handle this, and job is one part of this social struggle, let's to say. So in my personal belief, we should see the mistakes in our mirrors first, because if your glasses, if your perspective is always negative, you affect your social environment by this mindset. So let's say, what can you do to improve the situation of Muslims in these countries? Like other social groups do this, like the LGBTQ group. They are strongly supportive for their ideology, and now everybody supports them. And 50 years ago they got shot, so we don't get shot. So we have to change it.
It's an interesting question, because I think I know where the brother's coming from. Is it very hard to continue work for Islam in Germany as Muslim? I think Germany, Austria certainly has. Does it still have the far right government in power?
They left. They left too.
They left.
Yeah,
because I know for a number of years they were in power, and the threat was to close down the masajid and ban the niqab and all sorts of things like this. So the banning of the niqab happened. Did they ever get to close the masajid down?
They tried, and the courts reopened it.
Okay, alhamdulillah, good.
Yeah.
So they did actually try to do that then. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, with that backdrop, is it hard to do dawah in Germany and Austria and Switzerland? What are your thoughts?
Sertaj has way more experience in this, I think.
Sartaj, what do you
Yeah,
what do you
so
think?
yeah, I would say the statement or the question is there misses a component to it, because when we say it's very difficult, it depends on with which country we are comparing these three German speaking countries. For me personally, I mean, first of all, Dawah, we will be challenged. I mean, this is part of this way. If you start to go this way, you have to be aware of these challenges. I mean, the prophets were the ones who were the most challenged, right? So, but as Brother Amir mentioned, we always need to have a positive mindset in this case. I mean, I always remind what Brother Amir mentioned to me a couple of years ago. He said, brother, 70 years ago, it was unimaginable to do dawah stalls, to give lectures, to give Islamic conferences, you know, but now it is possible, right? So this positive mindset, I would say, impacted Iman and the brothers in Iman a lot, so that we continue. If there was a challenge, we try to fix it. And I think this is missing a little bit. And I also want to mention one thing regarding the brothers and sisters in Germany. There was a very well-known organization called LEAS, which is translated in English to read. That was basically distributing Quran, Quran copies in German-speaking countries. Now, this organization got banned by the government, and I realized that this led to a very pessimistic mindset in the Muslim community when it comes to dawah. Even brothers and sisters in Masajid who had an affinity to dawah, they basically made a distance to other organizations. And this was very negative impact, I would say, because the whole mindset was built around this organization. So if there was someone who has success, then it was this organization. So now when the organization was banned, there was no dawah left, right? So this is something which we need to focus. And that's why we said at Iman back in 2015, we need to empower brothers and sisters in their respective cities so that they basically create dawah teams and they can step by step take this, let's say, template of Iman or of Aira and basically step by step improve their content in the respective cities, right? And not be depending on one organization, and when the organization is banned, you stop with the dawah. That's not a mindset which we basically follow.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we've got some more comments coming in. Brother Jonas, he says, yes, the North is very liberal nowadays due to the involvement with the what's that? Hanseatic League, the Hansa, and trade with the foreign countries. Another comment here from Sister Yasmin. For the listeners to clarify, it's mainly Catholicism in Austria, Switzerland, and the south of Germany. Brother Sertaj, would you say that people in the villages in Austria are also not practicing religion much anymore? What is your answer to that?
I mean, the thing is, me myself, I live in a small city. You can also refer to it as village. So I have good experience here. So yes, the main people here in Austria are Catholics. And what I would say when it comes to these rural areas, I would say there is a slightly rising of Christianity in the mindset of the people. And I think this relates to also to the far right groups here. I think there is a component, there is a correlation between the rise of far right people and also politicians with Catholicism and Christianity. And I would say, yeah, there is a slightly awakening in the Christian community, I would say. And that's why we also need to get in dialogue, in communication, build points of contact, and
Absolutely.
of course, the main aspect, the primary aspect, to deliver the message of Islam, the pure monotheism, to our brothers and sisters in humanity.
Good. There's another comment here. Tonight's really interactive, actually. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. There's a lot of people interested in this topic. Brother Abdullah, he says, how do you respond when you know as a Muslim you are being targeted in an indirect way? For example, sabotaging you because they know you're Muslim and try to make your personal life difficult. For many Muslims in the workforce, plots are put against them, although the people they work with them seem pro-Muslim. How do you counter this with da'wah?
Oh.
For Amir, let's start with you,
Yeah,
Amir.
it is really a very interesting question because it gives you some aspects of conflict. There is a line of conflict which you have to analyze. What is the goal of the opponent, so to say? I'm still a little politician in my mind, and I always reflect on what is their interest. Because nobody hates you without any interest. Maybe the interest can be he's feared about your religion, or he has bad experience with you or your people. So you have to understand what does the person on the other table thinks. If you know what he thinks, and if you know what the person is about, then you can adapt to the situation. Let's say you have troubles with your friend, with your working colleagues, and they say, "Why does he pray?" It's not about praying. It's about having not a social relationship which gives you more productivity. Because if you are productive in your job and you pray, who cares? So you have to see different point of views. I hope I choose my words carefully, so I try and see the situation always with the perspective. That's what Sertac always in the Dawah training says he gives in the German-speaking countries. Remove your glasses, and take on the different glasses. So from the person next to you. So with these changes of glasses, you are able to see through his mind. So that's very important. So try to change glasses, and if the glasses don't fit, then give back. So
look at it from that perspective. I see your point. Sertac, what about you? How would you answer this? With regards to this question that Brother Abdullah's put on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very specific question. I mean, when it comes to I think he mentioned in the question regarding work colleagues, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Like how do you respond when you know as a Muslim you're being targeted, even if it's an indirect way? Like in UK, for example, we call that structural racism or institutional racism, where you have certain things which are very subtle. There's a glass ceiling on your above your head, and all this sort of type of behavior. So I guess he's talking about some of these things, but because you're specifically Muslim, you're being targeted even in your workplace. How do you deal with that?
I would say the brother Amir had a good first step to it. So I think the main aspect lies in social barriers, and we need to break down these barriers before we want to get accepted by the people, right? For example, let me give you an example. 10 years ago, when we moved to this city, basically, the neighbors were very skeptical here, right? They're Muslim people. How is this possible that they can afford a house, right? So there's a very Austrian. The area here is very a lot of Austrian people, non-Muslim people. So what ended up happening was when Eid came, our holiday, basically, which we celebrate. My mother baked some cakes, and I brought it to them, and I just talked with them, and they saw the human in me. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is very important to break down social barriers and also these cognitive barriers, because if you are successful with that, then you can step by step give the message of Islam, I would say. This can take a couple of days, couple of months, maybe a couple of years, but we have to have sabr, like Nuh alayhi salam had sabr, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us in the Quran, right? So I would say that the first step in this situation, if it's very specific, I would say we need to break down these stereotypes. and then step by step show them our humanness, you know. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Dr. Steph also mentions, as Brother Sertaj said, the Dawah in Germany is pretty new. During my time in the 1980s, there was no Dawah. So it seems to be a recent phenomenon. And some more comments here. We've got from Brother Hamoudi. Can you give advice for someone who wants to start doing Dawah? He's from South Germany.
Yeah.
You start first.
Okay. So it depends on what kind of starting point. When it comes to the knowledge, for example, I mean, first of all, as we deliver in our Dawah trainings, it's very important to have the right characteristics of a da'i, right? For example, we speak about knowledge, which is very important, of course, right? We speak about sabr, which is very important. We need to internalize these characteristics. Now, this is one aspect, right? Knowledge, sabr, ikhlas, right, is very important. Other aspects like communicative aspects, right? Active listening instead of passive listening, body language, all of these characteristics are very important. Now, on the other hand, the advice I can give you is, besides all of these characteristics which needs to be internalized, is also how to basically create a Dawah team in your area, right? This requires a little bit of leadership as well, and also the right brothers with the right mindset. And basically then you can step by step basically improve your Dawah, improve your content. I mean, this is how we started at Iman. You know, we started with Dawah stalls. That was our beginning. Now, subhanAllah, we are translating books. We are translating booklets and also printing it, and we'll deliver Dawah trainings. And we have new Muslim care we started 2 years ago, subhanAllah, which is very successful, alhamdulillah. So every time when I reflect with Brother Amir and reflect upon the last 4 years, we think about how is this possible, subhanAllah. You know, when we started with such a small, just a table put on the streets and invite people. So that's why I would say the characteristics on one hand, you know, the knowledge and everything, and on the other hand, also to gather brothers who have the same mindset, who have an affinity to Dawah, and then basically design your project, and then let's go.
Good. Amir, would you like to add anything to that as well? Can you give advice to somebody who wants to start doing Dawah? This brother's from South Germany.
Yes, Hamoudi is that's a very precise question. I like this question because it has really a strong goal. You have to, as Sertaj already said, you have to start with the right intention. That's very important. And what is your goal? Do you want to give, you know, durus? Do you want to give lectures? Because that's my strongest weakness, you know, for me as a person himself. I'm not able to give, you know, a ders. I'm not able to sit 2 or 3 hours in the mosque and listen to the sheikh. I would like to increase this. So if he's good in that, he should continue with this. He should continue with the attributes he's already good in it. If he speaks proper Arabic, he should, you know, continue start in any kind of tajweed, starting with this. If he is good in holding speeches, then he can talk to the non-Muslims and, you know, choose your strengths, improve them, and don't focus on the weaknesses, because everybody's weak. Everybody, if you give me enough time, I can tell you 200 weaknesses I have, but to focus on the strength is way more important.
I agree with that. You know, there's another question that's come here by Muslim BB. Have you ever had problems on the Dawah stalls from far-right racists? How do you deal with it? Brother, actually, do you want to start with that one?
Me, okay. SubhanAllah, actually, not really, to be honest. We had Jesus exhibition on the streets. We had our Dawah stalls, And we never had any major problems with far-right groups, even though, there is one or two organizations in Vienna, but we never had a very major problem with this. No, not really. And
Okay, what about
how
you,
we
Amir?
do how we deal with it. I mean, of course, we have to show if someone comes and mocks us or curses us or says bad things. Of course, I mean, from an Islamic perspective, we need to leave this conversation. We need to focus on the people who wants to have hidayah, who wants to be guided, and we need to focus on these people on the streets when we give dawah. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Good. Amir, would you like to add anything else to that?
Yes. Actually, I really like this last sentence, is that you focus on your resources. And if you know that a person takes, if you are on the Dawah's table, you are not 24 hours on the Dawah table. Yes, you don't do 24 hours continuously talking to a non-Muslim about Tawheed. Actually, you seldomly talk about Tawheed. Let's say 5 to 10 people on a day. That's my, approximate, I guess it, as far as I remember on my experience. You have to see the non-Muslim as a person who needs to get rescued. And if this person say, I want to be rescued, let's talk about Allah, let's talk about your book, let's talk about your prophet, then focus on this talk. And if somebody comes to you, as Sertac said, and mocks you or insults you, look, we don't need to talk to these people. And actually, we don't have any, they are not able to demand anything. Sometimes they just, I always say, if I'm on the table, I always say they put their social thrust or depression into you. So, but I don't care about that. So it's not my job to be a semi-professional psychiatrist. So if the person needs somebody professional, it's not me.
They need,
I want to talk about Allah.
Okay, we got quite a lot of comments to get through, so there's some more. And one is Pegida still strong in Germany? Muslim BB. Are they still strong in Germany? I remember they came to UK, or they tried to come to the UK. They tried, the first place they came to when they tried to set up in UK back in 2013. Guess which city?
Birmingham, I guess.
No.
Newcastle.
Newcastle. Our city. They tried it, but they failed miserably, my friends. Yeah. There must have been, it was their first protest rally in the UK. They decided Newcastle was the place to be. They must have got about a hodgepodge of about 60, 80 people, yeah, from EDL, Britain First, just grabbed whoever they can from the far right. And in response to that, there was 3,000 people from our city who came out in the anti-protest or anti-Pegida protest from all walks of life, Muslim, non-Muslim, every single people you can think of. They all came out in big numbers, and they got the biggest basting of their lifetime, and they never came back again. So not to Newcastle anyway. They failed miserably in the UK. But what about in Germany? Are they still quite strong in Dresden and places like that?
Let's actually, I just want to add a very precise sentence. I would not underestimate the influence of people who are right mindseted. It's not about the figures on the streets. It's about how strong the ideology affects the people. Because nowadays you have a strong, diverse anti-Islamic movement. It's not about Pegida alone. You must not see Pegida or any other kind of right-wing organization as a unique thing. It's the sum of every individual is more than the total number.
It's a collective, isn't it? That's what it is.
Exactly. You have political parties and strong. So to me, as far as I reflect on the news, you have strong right influence, which is 100% against Islam. As let's say in Dresden, they want to they hunt Muslims, and it's in East Germany. It's way different than where I live or where Sertac lives. So it's difficult. Yes, it is, but it's not 100% as easy as it can get. Yes, it's
Jonas
it's way more complex.
Similar, actually. He makes a comment. He says they are still there, mainly in Eastern Germany, but not as strong as they were a few years ago. So they're still there. I remember a few years ago they came out in about 30,000 people for one protest, one rally. They had huge numbers. That was in Dresden.
Yeah.
So now I think what Jonas is saying, it seems to have calmed down a little. But it's a good point, Amir. As a collective, forget about the individuals, but as a collective, all the far right groups, the fascist groups, the racist groups, the anti-Muslim groups, they actually making up more and more bigger numbers. Actually, Sartaj, what are your thoughts for this?
Bro, to be honest, I'm not so into that. So the thing is, I'm not so interested in the politics stuff. I'm a little bit interested in sociology because I had some classes on it, and also history. But my focus is mainly on giving dawah, you know. And when challenges come, of course, we need to fix that. But I'm not so focused in the inter-right wing communication and so on.
There's another comment here from Sister Yasmin. When I visited Salzburg, I noticed a strong anti-Islamic sentiment following the influx of refugees, and I saw many young people wearing traditional clothes. Could this be due to wanting to highlight an Austrian identity more? Furthermore, to highlight a recent experience, an older auntie told me she now goes to church in solidarity and due to the fear of the Turks being greater in numbers in a few years' time. So Sartaj, it's all your fault, bro. All your people's, man. Making a mess with the Turks.
All about Turkish.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the propaganda machineries, let's say, of the right-wing people, basically, you know, to dehumanize the Muslim. I mean, this is something which the Austrian people and German people are familiar with the history. So this is one of the ways which leads to dehumanization, the otherization, and this could be very, very dangerous, not only for the Muslim people, but also for our Jewish brothers and sisters in humanity, for the Sikhs, right? So, of course, we need to tackle that. We need to build a counter narrative to that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Another comment from Muhammad Ijaz Khan. You guys are doing a great job. Love from Pakistan. Why are we not together? Why are we in firqa? That's a completely new subject that we can talk about. Which firqa should we promote in dawah? Well, we should just be calling people to Islam and the Tawheed of Islam. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Islam is peace. Oh, Sartaj, you got a fan, man. Sartaj, you got a good beard, bro. Look what he's saying, man. He's loving it. You got a fan, bro. Do you remember that incident, Sartaj, when we were in Bosnia with Hafid and that brother from Kuwait, and Edin was with us as well? Do you remember we sat around that table? And the brother from Kuwait had a mustache and you had the beard. And Hafid Adnan made a very, very funny joke. He said, this is the first time that I'm seeing an Arab with a mustache and a Turk with a beard, Turkish with a beard, yeah? It's usually the other way around, right?
Yeah.
he made jokes, bro. He made jokes. But yeah, mashallah, you got a good beard. May Allah bless you and your beard, bro. Okay, so we got another question. Let me ask you a very specific question, okay? Tell us, give us some specific arguments. You mentioned about the breakdown of people. You've got, certain areas where it's Catholicism, certain areas that's a bit more liberal, and I guess atheist, and some who are deist. Give us some examples of some of the normal everyday conversations that you have with the Austrian, German, Swiss people. What kind of arguments do you normally get? What kind of discussions do you normally get into? Apart from the obvious, terrorism, misogyny, very specific dawah type of questions. What are the main ones, would you say, that you get asked by the German-speaking people?
Okay. So I would say when it comes to people who are skeptic about religion and belief in God, I would say the main argument, which in my case is not an argument, it's rather it's a question, which alhamdulillah, Islam has a very very reasonable answer to is the problem of evil, I would say. This is one of the main arguments or questions. So the problem of evil is basically, if there is an almighty and good God, how is it possible that he basically, how should I say, he lets all this mischief on the earth and everything? Because if he is good, he wouldn't let it be, and at the same time, if it would be almighty, he would avoid it, and he would basically fix it, right? This is, I would say, one of the questions. And from a Christian perspective, I would say the main polemic against Islam is attacking the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and his moral character, I would say, from this perspective. But we're talking now on a polemic level, right? Main people, they are not aware of these things, and they don't reflect
Joe,
upon
I'm talking about the average Joe on the street. What is their main argument? You said it's the problem of evil argument. How do you answer that to them? Just in a summary.
Yeah. So we can encounter this argument in different ways. First of all, the premises in these arguments are they're fallacious. Why? Because from an Islamic perspective, we don't limit Allah's attributes to just two attributes, which are Almighty and Good. So from an Islamic perspective, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is at the same time Al-Hakim, right? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions us in the Quran, Hikmatun balighatun. So fully wisdom. So he is the all-wise, basically, right? And at the same time, he is all-just. So from an Islamic perspective, we say that from behind every evil, there is a divine wisdom, which sometimes we can see the wisdom behind it, and sometimes not. And at the same time, Allah does not any evil. Allah doesn't let it unanswered. So there is, from an Islamic perspective, we believe akhirah, which is the afterlife, where everyone will be individually judged, and then the whole picture makes sense, basically, right? From an Islamic perspective, you were basically judged according to your deeds and sayings and so on. So from this perspective, we can encounter them. Is this enough, or should I continue?
That's good. That's very good. It's a brilliant answer. I think that it's a good starting point for many people who get asked this question a lot. To sum it up, we don't just have two attributes of Allah. We have many attributes of Allah. Islam is such a holistic religion that it deals with love and it deals with punishment. It deals with everything across the board because it is a just religion. This is the point here that people usually don't understand. And this life is not Jannah. This is not our paradise. Paradise is yet to come if we do the right things, so to speak, and by Allah's mercy in particular. So Amir, what would you say from the average German-speaking people? Is it the same as the UK? Is it the same as Europe? The main thing is, agnosticism, questions around the problem of evil, emotional argument. Is it similar, or is there anything different from the Germans?
That's a good question. When I was in Hyde Park and I was glad to collect impressions from the speaker's corner, I recognized that the level of rhetorics and the level of intellectual debate is way higher in Great Britain, or let's say in these, persons I met, than in Austria. Our dialogues are seldomly very high intellectual, where you can really debate, for the sake of debating. I focus in my talks, I always focus on the concept of truth and what is right and what is wrong and who is in power. Power relationship. Because nobody, or let's say nobody except maybe we can say Muslims, like to be dominated by a force who does not can be controlled. You cannot control Allah, but you can control your government, you can control the judge, you can control the police, but Allah is uncontrollable. You can't control him. So this concept is very spicy in dialogues, because if you think everybody obeys laws. Let's say I use this term when I talked about to an Austrian woman that she says, I don't believe in law. Nobody can tell me anything. I do what I want, and I can do what is, in my opinion, right. And I like to talk about what is right and what is wrong, because she said, I define what is right and wrong. Then I asked her, on which side do you travel on the streets when you go by car?
Yes.
She said on the right, because in Germany and Austria we go on the right, but
That's
you
right.
on the left. But
Yeah.
she has.
You go on the wrong side. We go on the right side.
It depends on the situation. But she accepts that she has to take one specific side of the road because somebody tells her. If she does not follow, if she does not obey the law, she gets punished, and she accepts. And then I ask, what is the difference between you, who has to obey millions of laws to millions of lawgiver, and me as a Muslim who has one lawgiver and accepts this lawgiver as his unlimited, uncontrolled, unpersonal? And she was not able to answer this.
Brilliant. That's a good answer.
She was then really, funny, right. And she left the discussion. So
yeah, exactly. Because there's no answer to it now. We've got some more comments here. We've got one from Christoph G. Since you started with Dawah, do you feel an increase of pressure from governmental authorities or other organizations? How do you deal with it? How is your relationship to your city officials? Do you feel all are against Islam and Islamic activities, or are they open for discussion? Sartaj, maybe you can start with this one.
So from our personal experience, we didn't have, and we still don't have, any major issues, I would say, right? So we don't have any major bans or problems regarding this. But our main focus, how we deal with this, is with 100% transparency. So from our perspective, you can see at Iman, there are social platforms that everything is transparent, everything is uploaded with all of our discussions which we have with the people on the streets, with the Austrian people. We upload it, and I mean, everyone who knows our videos, I mean, they are mainly in German. We have a very empathetic dialogue culture. So that's why I would say this is one thing. And of course, we always, if there are some things, we need to clarify. The transparency is very important. So clarifications, if there are misunderstandings, and transparency, I would say, are the steps to avoid legal issues and also other things.
Good. Amir, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, of course. Of course, if you see I differentiate between the inner circle and the outer circle of a Dawah organization, because I only focus my work on Iman. Of course, I support AIRA as best as I can, but so to say, Iman is my full life Dawah organization. The selection of the team members is one of the most important parts of a Dawah organization. I really precise.
I would agree with that.
You agree? Yes, alhamdulillah. 100%. Because you have social skills and you have educational skills, competences, as strong as you can read Quran, and what is your, fiqh knowledge, and where did you study. This is all, structural knowledge. But your social competence is in my personal opinion, way more important than your knowledge of, let's say, Quran. Because Quran and Hadith and so on, this knowledge is quite easy to learn when you are 20, 25, 30. But it's not very easy to learn being patient when you're 25, or to learn how to make not an argument. Don't fight with people on the streets. Don't, shout each other. How do you handle pressure? What about if somebody is not nice to you? If you're 30 and you are not socially comprehensible, it's nearly impossible to correct that. So that's way a bigger problem to a DAO organization, because if you have not focused persons in your field of action, this can is really strong influence your work, and actually it can destroy your work.
Yeah.
So look at your circle, look who influences you, and let's influence the best. So that's really important.
There's another question from Sister Yasmin. Is it mostly through Dawah stalls that you give Dawah, or do you give, or do you use other ways or platforms with Iman? What else do you have? Give us an overview of what Iman does, the types of activities that are involved with Iman. Because what I do know is the Dawah stalls. I do know that you have the podcast with Iman TV and things like that. So give us an overview of what other activities you do aside from Dawah stalls.
Yeah, so aside from the Dawah stalls, we have, as you mentioned, the Iman Talk podcast, which is, I would say, the first Islamic Dawah based podcast in German-speaking countries, as far as I know. Unfortunately, should be more, but and alhamdulillah, that's very. We have alhamdulillah good feedback on that. So this is something which Brother Amir hosts. So we are reaching out to academics, people with expertise, to share their story in our podcast, alhamdulillah. Then we have new Muslim support. Now, we started this 1 or 2 years ago. So what we realized was, brothers and sisters are saying their shahada, they embrace Islam, but what should we do with them? I mean, this was one of the main aspects. We have shahada, so what should we do with these brothers and sisters? That's why we started with the new Muslim support. Now, this basically is we started with a new Muslim box gift. This was our first project, basically, which is basically a gift box with literature and so on. And then, alhamdulillah, with the support of IRA, we were also able to basically start our first new Muslim retreat in 2019, which was, alhamdulillah, such a blessed experience, where we invited 10 brothers actually, for 4 days. And we started teaching them how to make wudu, how to pray, how to read Quran. We gave lectures, we had main sessions, and it was a really good experience, alhamdulillah. We want to continue this every year. On the other hand, we also have Dawah materials. So currently we are not writing Dawah materials by our own, but we are translating it and we're printing it, alhamdulillah. And I would say these are the main activities.
And the Dawah trainings.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is now more with IRA, of course, but of course we also have the Dawah trainings. We have lectures. We have a full Dawah training. We have the Go Rep training, and alhamdulillah, we are getting invited by brothers from Germany and organizations, student associations, also from Switzerland, and yeah.
Okay, good. We've got loads of questions coming on, guys. We've got loads of comments here. Alhamdulillah, it's a very busy show tonight.
Yes,
so we've got
work.
Christoph is back with another comment, which is, do you also have the feeling that people just have no clue from Islam or religion in general, rather they are scared or full of hate? And next step is that they're just scared to change their Western way of life, I feel. Amir, what about
absolutely? That's a very wise question, and I remember Sheikh Abdul Rahman Green, when I met him, I think the second or the third time. Once he said a sentence which changed a part of my life. He said, especially focused on Dawah, he said, the problem is not seeing the truth. The problem is accepting the truth. And that's what I feel in the debates at every single moment. When I finished, and I say it's like Sertac and everybody's on the Dawah store, after 10 to 15 minutes, we gave them the complete Islamic narrative. Who is Allah? In what do we believe? What is the Quran? Who are the messengers? What will happen after we are dead? and who will enter paradise, who will enter hellfire. Everybody understands this. Nobody asks like, what is Allah after 10 minutes? Yes. But then it comes to accepting it. And that's the major point. Of course, Islam is not majority, but I would estimate everybody knows Islam in Austria already. They know what is Islam. The very little people, a few people don't know it. The majority knows, of course, it. The question is, how do they accept it, or what is their approach? And sometimes this approach can lead to xenophobic. They don't like the migrants, and sometimes they reflect. And all our Dawah stall talks are recorded. And I was sitting on the server last night, and I saw we have more than 80 or 90 dialogues which we did not use at all. They are very strong focused, and the people after they talk to us have a basic fundament of Islam, and then then the journey starts for them. So our goal is to convey this message, to be a reason why the person reflects, and after that it's in Allah's capability. If he opens the heart to the person and the person sees the truth in this deen, or she has any questions left, this is also very often happened, and then we have to talk about some specific questions. But at all, after 15 minutes on the Dawah stall, the person really sees Islam, knows Islam, and that's what their main focus is.
Brilliant. Jazakallah khair. The Sister Yasmin's asking, can you share the link for the podcasts, please? Can one of you guys put it on the comments? Just put the link on there so that anyone who's watching this, they can get it as well. Okay, so Christoph, he comes back with, like, unfortunately these days there's a big lack of making Islam attractive for like the upper German class. They just think, why should they deal with people which doesn't speak German, have no jobs? Well, to be honest with you, from my point of view,
that's a good question.
We have to represent Islam in the best possible way that we can by following the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, and showing Islam in our manners, in our behaviors, as well as our belief, right? And speech. So I would probably argue that, when we practice Islam, when we practice Islam correctly by following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there's nothing more that can make it attractive any more than that, right? So we have to represent in the best possible way. That would be my argument to that. And if people still can't accept that, then we discussed this on the weekend with one of the other shows about white supremacism and, white privilege and white superiority complexes. They need to get over that. And they need to, like Amir put it beautifully, actually. It's not about showing that Islam is the truth. It's whether they will accept that it's the truth. That's where it comes down to. Can you lower your ego? Can you suppress your ego? Can you overcome your superiority complex? Can you let go of, for example, and this really tight attachment to it in order to submit your will to the will of Allah? That's the real question. Can you do that? Not the fact that some Muslims are behaving like this or some Muslims are behaving like that. No, we're talking about what is the truth here. Can you accept the truth or not? This is the real question. Have you done enough research to check that? So that's how I'd probably answer that one. We've got a couple of questions which are linked to that. Brother Feroz from New Zealand. Where's he gone?
Wow, New Zealand.
Yeah. Very often when people cannot challenge Tawheed, they try to discredit Islam with terrorism, Muslims killing innocent people. That's a very, very good point, because, you're both involved in Dawah. You can bring logical arguments for the proof of God's existence. You can explain Tawheed very well. And when they can't argue with that, what do they revert to? It goes into a cycle of questions, right? One after the other. I'm sure you guys have experiences of that as well.
Yes, as far as I remember, Sertac gives in his Dawah trainings a very precise.
I think he's out now.
Sertaj, maybe you can jump in.
Yeah. So when it comes to, can you rephrase the question again, please?
Yeah, basically my point was, when they can't deal with the tawheed element,
Yes.
the logical arguments, they usually refer to something else. They usually turn the direction elsewhere,
Yeah. I mean, this is the essence of the Goreb, right? The Goreb approach, where we, I mean, subhanallah, we are in the Dawah. We are not here to answer all the questions. This is something which is very important. I mean, if we reflect upon the Quran, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks rhetorical questions and doesn't answer it directly because it's an inference. For example, am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in, and have they been created out of nothing, right? So these are things which we need to consider, because if you start answering these questions, you lost 20 minutes, 30 minutes of just answering question after question, and there were other follow-up questions, and afterwards you're asking yourself, what did I tell him about Allah? What did I tell him about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the core message of Islam? And the comment previously regarding that people don't accept it, subhanallah, people didn't accept the arguments of Nuh alayhi salam. And I don't think that our arguments are better than the ones of Nuh alayhi salam. So it's important to not get demotivated by this, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who guides, and we try to be a tool that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to guide these people. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions. There's a couple of brothers who were at the retreat. So we've got Brother Benedict, and what a retreat it was, alhamdulillah. He was at the retreat as well, if you remember. And Jonas comments, was so awesome. He's giving you guys a big heart, so the retreat is definitely something that I would recommend is for new Muslims. Brother, when we were talking about that issue of new Muslim support, he makes the comment, in the new Muslim support, do you consider that many might have a cognitive intellectual impairment that may restrict how they understand and practice the religion, and they need extra support when you're looking at new Muslim support?
Yeah, I mean, this depends on the background of the reverted brother or sister, right? For example, if someone comes from a Christian background and he was practicing Christian, from my little experience, they mainly have this father-son relationship in their mind. And from a Christian perspective, it's also important that it's just a transmitted religion, basically. But Islam is not just a transmitted, it's also a lived religion, right? So this is very important to show them that Islam is not only about talking and believing, it's also about action. And this transformation is very important to be a good Muslim mu'min. And there are some brothers who need extra support in specific areas.
There's another question by our brother Eldar from Bosnia. How to work with people who publicly hide their interest about Islam, or they're converted because their family is against them and they depend on them? How do you work with non-Muslims who have interest in Islam but hide it, or new Muslims who have converted but they hide it from their families? What is your advice to those individuals?
That's a very complex topic, because you cannot give suggestions or advices to a big social situation, because you don't know the persons. And even if you know the persons, it's very difficult to feel how they feel, to see what they see. The general ruling is, if you believe in Islam and you believe by heart this is the true religion, then you are Muslim if you speak out the Shahada, and that's a strong recommendation. Everybody who has not speaking out the Shahada, even if he believes in Islam, should start to accept this truth and say this once in his life, so Allah accepts you, inshallah, as a 100% Muslim. The social environment is different, because if you know that you get, let's say, kicked out of home, if you are, I don't know, 20 years old and you are a woman, and the parents would say, "Oh, if you convert to Islam, I kick you out of my house, and you are not my daughter anymore." That's very difficult. And me, I always suggest to stay in the family situation as long as you are able to. If it's not nice to live with parents who are non-Muslims, then it's a test. And you should not, ignore the feelings of your mother and your father, because they love you. They want the best from you. They care of you. They have born you. They don't ignore what you say. But if it's difficult, go step by step. And if they really say, "We don't accept you as our child anymore if you convert," this is actually the most difficult situation I can imagine as a person. I would, of course, seek the Ummah and ask for help as much as I can and as much precise as I can. So that's a recommendation.
Okay, good. One last question before we wrap up the show. We've got a lot of brothers giving their salams because they have to go as well. But
Wa alaikum
one
salam.
last question for you, which is obviously recently we've seen in the media the famous MMA fighter Willie Ott. Is that right? Is that his name?
His name is Willie Ott, yes.
Yeah, you recently interviewed him, Amir. How did that go? How was the interview with him? Tell us a little bit about him, just in a summary. And how is
Willie Ott is a boxer, fighter. He's 30 years old, and he has given dawah by many persons in his life. Many persons, he said more than 20 Muslims told him about Islam. And not
more than 20.
More than 20 persons told him about Islam in 10 years. Since 10 years, he has been given dawah. So all the brothers from Chechnya, from Russia, from Turkey, they told him that Islam is the religion of one God. And if you die without this religion, you are not entering the paradise with me. And that, he said, was very clear. He always believed in Islam, but he was not convinced to accept it. And then when he sat with one brother who explained specifically what happens to a person without Islam, without Iman, then he recognized, I have to take a step and to accept this because I believe in it. And then he converted to Islam, and then he told me that he gets daily 20 Heiratsangebote. What is Heiratsangebot in English?
Marriage requests.
Yes, he gets married like 20 in a day. So from Muslims around the world. So it's social media affected him very strong. I think he has now 100,000 subscriber or follower in 1 week. He raised 100,000 so in 1 week. So we have to take care of him. He's a strong situation, and he loves this deen, and he wants to die as a Muslim.
MashaAllah.
That's his greatest wish.
Maybe we can get him on the show, brother Amir. If you speak to him, we can get him on the late show sometime as well, inshallah.
Possible.
If it's possible, you could speak to him, inshallah. Good. Jazakumullah khair. Right, so that's the end of the program for tonight. It's been a really, really productive show. We've had a lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of interaction from the viewers. But I've got to ask you guys, especially Amir, I've got to ask you one time, bro. One time.
Yeah.
You got to say it, man. I'll be back. Say it, bro. Look to the camera and say it.
I'll be back.
That's it.
In what situation do you bring me, bro?
I will bring you, man. It's a pleasure having you. Honestly, I miss you, brothers. I remember coming over. We met. We had such good brotherhood when we were there in Austria. You know, I meet Sertaj every so often, but honestly, we miss your company, Amir. We've got to catch up again sometime, inshallah. All three of us. Maybe after this lockdown, I'll try and make a trip over to Austria again, inshallah.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Good stuff. Nice one, brothers. No, I'm not going to make him say that. That's shocking. let's catch up. We'll wrap it up there, inshallah. So, Sartaj and Amir, salam alaikum. Jazakumullah khairan for your time. No doubt we'll be in touch.
Inshallah. Take care. Barakallah
Take
feek.
care. Greets to Great Britain. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.